Previously in part 1, I, a shunned daughter, was forced into a sham marriage with the crippled crown prince to cover my sister's scandalous pregnancy. On the wedding day, I exposed the truth with a calculated move, plunging the palace into chaos. But the game has just begun. As I navigate a deadly web of court intrigue, I discover my broken husband is far more dangerous and powerful than he appears. The assassin captured by the emperor committed suicide by poison shortly after Ethan Joe was taken to a side hall for interrogation. I had been in charge of the mid-autumn festival banquet, so naturally, I was the first to be held responsible. Next was consort Stella. Her dancers had suddenly revealed themselves as assassins and tried to kill a royal heir, a crime punishable by death. Your Majesty, I've been wronged. Someone has clearly framed me. Consort Stella's pomegranate red gauze dress was stained with specks of blood. Her hairpins were askew, and stray strands clung to her face. Tears mingled with her makeup, streaking down to her chin. She looked like a pear blossom in a storm, shattered and tragically beautiful. My original dancers fell ill just a few days ago. Severe stomach pains from something they ate. These assassins, I had to find them on short notice from outside the palace. Consort Stella shuffled forward on her knees until she was at the emperor's feet, her voice trembling uncontrollably. I truly knew nothing, Your Majesty. Suddenly, as if a realization struck her, she jerked her head up. Your Majesty, someone deliberately poisoned my dancers, all to kill the crown prince. The emperor glanced down at Consort Stella at his feet but said nothing. Anyone fit to sit on the throne is not blind to such tricks. The only question is for power right under his nose. But Ethan Zhao was more ruthless, willing to use even his own life as a chess piece. In that case, was his fall from the horse and subsequent illness also a move in his game? I didn't dare to dwell on it. Ethan Zhao was a man of profound cunning, skilled at reading people. I couldn't see through him at all. Perhaps I should find an escape route for myself sooner rather than later. This is clearly a setup. Consort Stella has no sons. She has no motive to assassinate the crown prince. Besides, if she truly intended to carry out an assassination, she wouldn't be foolish enough to disguise her own assassins as dancers. That's as good as announcing she's the mastermind. The voice brought me back to my senses. It was Mary Tong, speaking up for Consort Stella. After all, thanks to my earlier efforts, the entire palace knew that while I had arranged the banquet, every detail still required the Empress's final approval. Mary Tong was not only defending Consort Stella but also clearing her own name. As for the crown princess, with the crown prince gravely injured and unconscious, a husband and wife are of one heart. How could she possibly harm him? Mary Tong's gaze swept over me, a flash of impatience in her eyes. She had originally intended to put me in a difficult position and make me a laughingstock. She never expected the plot to unravel, forcing her to speak up on my behalf. Your Majesty, it's obvious someone is using Consort Stella to assassinate the crown prince, showing contempt for imperial authority and sowing discord. If we don't thoroughly investigate and find the mastermind, I fear more trouble will brew in the palace. Mary Tong's every word rang with sincerity. The emperor's sharp gaze lifted, scanning me with this matter. The emperor said, looking at Julian Zhou, "Since you feel so strongly, I will leave this investigation to you." With that, the emperor stepped around Consort Stella and stood up. The banquet was disrupted by an assassination attempt. This has been a shocking ordeal for everyone. Let us disperse early. On his way out, the emperor passed by me and made a point to remind me to go see Ethan Zhao. The imperial physician stopped Ethan Zhao's bleeding, but because the internal injuries from his fall had not yet healed, the new stab wound only worsened his already weakened state. The physician said the crown prince's pulse was faint and he likely wouldn't wake up anytime soon. I stood watch by his bed. All the color had drained from Ethan Zhao's face. His skin was so pale it was almost transparent, and I could faintly see the bruising beneath. He looked so genuinely ill. It didn't seem like an act. I moved closer, the candlelight flickering across his face. My fingers quietly reached for his wrist. I wanted to check if his pulse was truly as faint as they claimed. Perhaps due to the blood loss, his skin felt cool to the touch. Just as I was about to check more carefully, the closed eyes before me suddenly flew open. I was so startled, I snatched my hand back and stumbled away. A faint smile touched Ethan Zhao's bloodless lips. He coughed weakly. The first person I see upon waking is my crown princess. How fortunate. Are you insane? Your wound will reopen. I grabbed a handkerchief to wipe away the blood already seeping from the corner of his mouth. He grabbed my wrist. Don't worry, it's just a little internal bleeding. It won't kill me. He winced slightly, the movement likely pulling at his wound. You certainly have great self-control, I said coldly, pulling the handkerchief away. My crown princess has quite a temper, Ethan Zhao sighed. Not as grand as your schemes. You knew there were assassins among the dancers all along, didn't you? I understood that Ethan Zhao had known about the assassination beforehand. I understood he was aware that Julian Zhou's faction would leave no loose ends. I even understood the logic. Eliminating the assassins too early would only alert the enemy, and by taking the blow himself, he could evoke the Emperor's guilt and delay his own deposition. I was just furious at being used as a pawn, one who could have been killed without knowing the first thing about it. Even if I was using Ethan Zhao, I had never put his life in danger, had I? Claire Yin, he called me by my full name for the first time. We're very much alike. That's why I took this blow for you. I clutched the damp corner of the handkerchief and bit my lip, silent. It was true. Without him, I wouldn't have escaped blame. But why couldn't he have told me beforehand? I turned away in silence, but he grabbed my wrist. Think of it as a small price to pay to avert a greater disaster. Surely my crown princess understands that? His tone was no longer serious. I don't understand what you're saying. Is that so? The fingers wrapped around my wrist tightened gradually, but it was a grip I could have easily broken. Consider the 10,000 taels of silver from Consort Stella as payment for your medicine. 10,000 taels. That was more than half of my recent profits. Don't. Why are you so stingy when it comes to me? I'm going to need that money to escape. The words slipped out before I could stop them. His smile froze. Escape? From me? His voice dropped, laced with a chill. Where do you plan on going? I bit my lip, refusing to answer. For the next few days, Mary Tong came to visit every day. Of course, her true intention was to see Ethan Zhao, but Ethan Zhao was always, coincidentally, unconscious when she arrived, leaving her disappointed every time. On the fourth day, I received some unexpected good news. The head eunuch of the Eastern Palace brought me a heavy pouch of silver. Crown Princess, His Highness has recovered the money from Consort Stella for you. It is 10,000 taels in total. I gripped the pouch, feeling its weight in my hand. He had only taken the initial 10,000 taels and had returned the rest. But why? Crown Princess, His Highness also said that if you need silver in the future, you can simply ask him directly. You have a husband to rely on, so there's no need to hoard wealth behind his back. My chest tightened. Ethan Zhao was about to be deposed. What reliance could I have on him? But no matter what, having 10,000 taels was better than nothing. I had been worried about how to gather enough money for my escape. I thanked the head eunuch and took the silver. Just as I was turning to leave, Ethan Zhao's voice came from behind me. Are you that happy to have your silver back? You wouldn't begrudge me even a few thousand taels, would you? A soft chuckle came from behind me. I am the crown prince. If my crown princess wants silver, hope. Ethan Zhao's injuries were severe, so the emperor gave him special permission to recuperate in the palace until his condition improved. Ostensibly, it was because the imperial infirmary had many skilled physicians who could better care for him. In reality, it was just a way to keep him under surveillance. In the end, the emperor still didn't trust Ethan Zhao. Brotherly affection and filial piety were rare commodities in the imperial family. I personally fetched and brewed Ethan Zhao's medicine every day. First, to prevent anyone from tampering with it, and second, because I wanted to steal some herbs from the imperial infirmary. Ever since Ethan Zhao laid claim to the silver I'd extorted from the palace consorts, a strange sense of crisis had begun to grow within me. Ethan Zhao was a man who could read people's hearts. When I was around him, he could see right through me if I wasn't careful. After being used by him once, my fear of him grew by the day. I had considered faking my death long ago. Back then, I had no money, not even a single decent piece of jewelry. Escaping the Yin residence would have just been trading one hell for another. Plus, at that time, I was still naive, still believed in his promises. He told me he would ask the emperor to annul our engagement after he won the title of Marquise. He would then take me as his wife and protect me for the rest of my life. A year later, his older brother died of illness, and he inherited the title. The promise he once made so casually scattered to the wind, leaving me standing alone. From that moment on, I understood that the only person I could ever rely on was myself. I had long since memorized the formula for the fee this taught me. "You don't greet me when you see me, my lord." I stopped, keeping a careful distance from him. "Claire, Adrian Chi's eyes lowered. "I came here today specifically to wait for you. My lord, we are both married now. If we're seen together, the palace gossips will surely cause endless trouble." Adrian Chi's clear eyes fixed on me. "Claire, you must be well aware of what becomes of the crown princess to soon-to-be deposed crown prince." He let out a long sigh. "I know you hate me, but I just want to help you. If he had really died during the Mid-Autumn Festival, do you think anyone in the palace would have let you live?" I struggled to maintain a calm facade, but I couldn't refute him. The truth was just as he'd said. If Ethan Joe died, I would be forced to die with him. I have already married the crown prince. In life, I am his wife. In death, I will be his ghost. Life and death are fated. I will accept my destiny. I lowered my eyes to hide the deep sorrow within them. "Claire, please, let me help you," Adrian Chi said, stepping forward quickly to grab my hand. I looked up and met his gaze, which was filled with deep affection. I did need Adrian Chi. Even with the feigned death potion, I couldn't possibly escape successfully without help, and the entire Eastern Palace was crawling with Ethan Joe's spies. For now, at least, Adrian Chi was still useful. "Are you sure this is the right place?" The sound of hurried footsteps approached from a short distance away. The Empress's head palace maid delivered the message herself. I could react. An arm wrapped around my waist, and I collided with a solid chest. A hand gripped my chin, forcing his lips onto mine. The bitter taste of medicine mingled with a sharp, cold scent, throwing my world into chaos. By the time Ethan Zhao released me, not only Serafina Lin but Adrian Chi had also vanished. Now I understood. The faint pulse, the unhealed internal injuries, it was all a facade. Just like now, I weakly gripped his arm, my chest rising and falling as I tried to catch my breath. Just as I was about to push myself up and away from him, the hand that had been loosely holding my waist suddenly tightened, and our eyes met. "I despise apricot blossoms." "That's the scent of the sachet Serafina Lin is wearing." "How did you know?" "Sean happened to be passing by and saw you two. I figured some trouble was brewing, so I came to take a look." He had clearly been following me. "And why are you so certain it's me attracting unwanted attention?" "Because the woman who just now tried to frame me is your confidant." "Who is the one with a trail of admirers?" I reached back to pry his hand from my waist. Ethan Joe caught my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Jealous? How would I dare be jealous of you?" I laughed self-deprecatingly. "He's right. I won't be the crown prince for much longer. By then, I might be bedridden. A useless cripple. Anyone could come curse at me or kick me a few times." Ethan Zhao said these desolate words with that same unreadable smile. He seemed to have only one expression: no joy, no anger. But that often made him all his thin lips brushed against my earlobe as he delivered those 4 words, sending a scorching jolt through my body. Even though Ethan Zhao was just acting, my face burned hot. "What are you saying?" "Of course, I will stand with you through thick and thin," I said, using a laugh to mask my chaotic thoughts. Ethan Zhao had personally snuffed out my last hope of using Adrian Chi. Adrian would surely think I had deliberately put on that show in front of him. Serafina Lin must have also witnessed our deep kiss. She would assume Mary Tong had deliberately arranged for her to see it to humiliate her. And Mary Tong would soon find out about the intimate moment between me and the man she adored, which would only make her try harder to torment me. Instead of saying Ethan Zhao had rescued me, it was more accurate to say he had dug an even deeper pit for me. My thoughts were interrupted when Sean pushed an empty wheelchair to my side. He bowed to me. "Crown Princess?" Then he looked at Ethan Zhao. "Your Highness, a message from the palace." Ethan Joe still had his arm around my waist. He glanced at me. The crown princess is not an outsider. Just speak your mind. Sean nodded. The third prince's men were attacked by bandits while transporting salt. The emperor is furious and has ordered the third prince to recover it at once and prevent the salt from entering the black market. Ethan Zhao's face was calm, not a flicker of surprise in his eyes. You were in charge of salt transportation before. The emperor has summoned you to the imperial study to discuss countermeasures. After speaking, Sean prepared to take the wheelchair from me, but Ethan stopped him after just 2 steps. The crown princess can push me there, Ethan Zhao said flatly, before getting into the wheelchair himself. My of me recommending him to recover the stolen salt? The him he was referring to was Adrian Chi. I watched Ethan Zhao enter the imperial study, then waited outside for him. It wasn't that I didn't want to leave. But on our way here, Ethan had put on a grand performance for the palace staff, making it seem as though I was so worried about his health that I'd insisted on accompanying him. The act was so convincing that even one of the emperor's favorite attendants couldn't help but remark, "The crown prince and princess are truly devoted to each other." And so, here I was, stuck outside the imperial study. I couldn't leave, and my legs ached from standing for so long. Crown princess of the Eastern Palace? More like Ethan Zhao's personal maid. When the door opened, I slowly shuffled toward Ethan. As I drew closer, I saw Prince Julian Zhou following him out. The memory of our last tooth-for-a-tooth encounter surfaced, and I had to fight back a smile. "What is you smiling so happily?" Ethan asked, his tone doting. I saw the color drain from Julian's face. The veins on his neck bulged. His chair to the study herself. A bond so deep is truly unlike any other. In a few days, my brother will be leaving to recover the stolen official salt, leaving the princess alone in the capital. I'm afraid she will pine for him every day. What is to be done? A sinister gleam shone in Julian's eyes. Each word sounded like he wanted to rush forward and tear me to pieces. Confused, I looked at Ethan. Wasn't the official salt lost under Julian's supervision? Why was Ethan being sent to retrieve it? Whether I liked it or not, Ethan was the only one I could rely on now. If he really left the capital, I dared not imagine what Julian would do to me. After all, to Ethan, I was just a pawn. Before Ethan could speak, I quickly interjected, "You are still weak. How can you endure such a long journey?" My eyes filled with worry, and tears welled up, dripping onto the back of Ethan's hand. I was genuinely worried about my own life. If I wanted to survive, I had to cling to Ethan with all my might. "You must take me with you. I don't trust anyone else to take care of you." As I spoke, tears streamed down my face like a broken string of pearls. Ethan chuckled and coaxed me gently. "I'm going on official business. It wouldn't be proper for you to come along." "I don't care. The imperial physician said it was a miracle you were saved from death's door. And now you have to deal with bandits? How can I possibly be at ease?" I threw myself into his arms, wiping my tears all over his robes. Ethan lowered his head and whispered in a slightly stern tone, "This is the imperial study. You mustn't..." Serious tone, and sighed lightly. "Even our younger brother is pleading your case. Now that everyone knows, are you satisfied?" There wasn't a hint of blame in his voice. In fact, he sounded like he was enjoying it. Others might think he was happy to be so affectionate with his new wife, but I knew Ethan was gloating. Great. Now he had someone to use as a shield. The emperor ordered Ethan to set off the next day. I took the opportunity to pack my valuables that night, planning to escape midway through the journey. Ethan's old wounds hadn't healed, and the bandits were all desperate men. Dealing with them would be extremely dangerous. What's more, the salt was stolen in the East Prefecture, a region known for its vicious outlaws. Adrian Chai was also accompanying us, but it was Julian's suggestion, not Ethan's. It seemed both the emperor and Julian were impatient to see a new crown prince. Because we had to travel quickly, the carriage sped along at a brutal pace. Within an hour, my head was spinning, and the constant jolting nearly sent me tumbling into Ethan's arms several times. Seeing me struggle to stay upright, Ethan couldn't help but smile. "This medicine will help with the dizziness. You'll feel better if you take it and get some sleep." He took a small white jade bottle from his sleeve and offered it to me. I pretended to be resting with my eyes closed and didn't take it. Ethan chuckled. Scared? My eyes snapped open. You've tricked me time and again. How could I not be scared? Ethan wasn't annoyed. He spoke with the patient tone of a teacher coaxing a child, but his words did nothing to soothe the burning acid rising in my throat. To be killed by him, I'd die from the exhaustion of the journey first. In the end, I gave in and took the medicine. The relief was almost immediate, and my eyelids grew heavy. I leaned against the carriage wall and drifted off to sleep. As I slowly woke up, I felt someone tapping my shoulder. I was still so tired that I brushed it away, wanting to go back to sleep. If you don't wake up and get captured again, don't blame me. Warm breath tickled my ear. I was instantly awake. I jerked my head up and slammed it right into Ethan's jaw. You certainly have a talent for trying to murder your husband, Ethan said, slowly raising a hand to rub his chin. Only then did I realize I was pressed against Ethan's chest. My right hand was even inside his robes, resting on the thin fabric of his inner shirt, warm from his skin. I was sure I had fallen asleep against the carriage wall. How did I? I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. The road was bumpy, and you were sound asleep. You fell over and didn't even wake up. And you? Ethan's gaze shifted downward, landing on the bulge my hand made under his robe. Grabbed onto me and wouldn't let go. It finally registered. I quickly pulled my hand back and moved away from him. I've been too forward. If you think this is forward, what will you do when we're far more familiar? The carriage came to a sudden halt, and I was thrown right back into his arms. Ethan let out a muffled grunt, and I remembered the wound on his back. Is your wound all right? I turned to look at him. He chuckled. Weren't you just saying you were being too forward? My face flushed, and I turned to glare at him. Just then, an attendant peered into the carriage to announce our stop. Seeing us, he immediately jumped to the wrong conclusion and scrambled back out. He announced, his voice the moment, "Come back and inform us when the tents are set up." Just as I'd feared, crimson was staining his white inner shirt. I quickly applied medicine to Ethan's wound, and we got out of the carriage. People passed by our carriage from time to time, their gazes wary. Adrian Chi no longer showed the cloying affection he once used to pester me with. He seemed to be deliberately keeping his distance. Out here in the wilderness, far from the capital, it would be easy to fabricate some evidence, to say the bandits got wind of their journey and launched a preemptive strike, and get away with it. As long as everyone else was dead and only Adrian was left, whatever he said would be the truth. As for me, when faced with power and status, I would always be the one he would sacrifice. It was true before, and it was true now. But it wouldn't matter anymore. Because tonight, these power struggles would no longer have anything to do with me. I had already exchanged my valuables for gold leaves, which were easy to carry, and packed them in a pouch on my belt. All I had to do was escape during the ensuing chaos. As night deepened, I used the excuse of relieving myself to slip away from the camp. Just as I was about to run, something pressed against my back. Even through the layers of clothing, I could feel the sharp edge of a blade. A warm breath brushed past my ear. Leaving without watching the show? A familiar presence enveloped me. I turned my head cautiously and found Ethan pressed against my back, a hidden dagger at my spine, his voice still gentle. I should have known long ago that his leg injury had already healed. Or perhaps it was never injured at all. What do you want? Many were slain before they could even draw their weapons. Their throats slit with a single strike. In moments, the campsite was littered with bodies. The distant firelight flickered in the wind, clearly illuminating the slaughter in the dark. Too far, can't see clearly. Let's get a closer look. With that, Ethan wrapped an arm around me and leaped into the air. His toes tapped on the treetops before we landed on a closer branch. I watched as Adrian Chi killed all of his own attendants. One of the men, in his final moments, stared wide-eyed, dying without knowing why his loyal master had just killed him with his own hands. Blood dripped from the edge of the blade, staining the ground crimson. Adrian Chi walked toward the carriage, his eyes filled with killing intent. "Did he teach you your martial arts?" Ethan suddenly asked from behind me. I didn't understand, so I just made a soft sound of confusion. Had Adrian really turned on me tonight, there was no way I could have defended myself against him. "I'll teach you something useful," Ethan said. He produced a bow and arrow from somewhere and took my hand, placing it on the bow. Pay attention. Before I could react, Ethan had knocked an arrow, its tip aimed directly at the back of Adrian Chi's head, just as Adrian was about to lift the carriage curtain. Concentrate. Aim carefully. Ethan's face drew close to mine, his eyes narrowed slightly. The autumn night was cool, but with Ethan's body pressed so close to mine, I didn't feel the chill at all. Look at the target, not at me. His dark pupils flicked toward me, then back to Adrian. He guided my hands, shifting the arrowhead to aim at the back of Adrian's neck, pierced the back of his neck, and hot blood splattered. He looked down in shock at the arrow protruding from his throat, blood spilling from the corners of his mouth as he collapsed to his knees. My chest heaved violently. My mouth was dry, and my mind went blank. I never thought Ethan would make me kill Adrian Chi. I looked at him, my eyes filled with terror. A satisfied smile spread across Ethan's face. You're a fast learner. He saw my unease. Claire, don't be soft-hearted. If you want to leave, you have to get rid of your loose ends. As he spoke, more men rushed out from the woods, their targets the masked men in black. From their attire, you could tell they were bandits. The real bandits. And this was Ethan's backup plan. He was taking this chance to eliminate all of Julian's men, fake his own disappearance, and bide his time. The so-called bandits stealing the official salt was probably also orchestrated by Ethan. More practice? Ethan's voice brought me back to my senses. A new arrow was already on the string, aimed at one of the masked men. I'll let you go when you've learned. I turned my face to look at him, my heart full of doubt. I don't trust you. Ethan's features relaxed, his long, narrow eyes curving like a crescent moon. But now, you have no choice but to trust me. Then, his large hands enveloped mine, plunging me back into the slaughter. After all the men in black were killed, Ethan ordered their bodies to be piled up and burned along with the tents and baggage, leaving nothing but ashes. The bandit leader, his face still splattered with drying blood, looked curiously at me beside Ethan, and couldn't help but jest, since when did our Lord acquire such a beauty? She's currently trying to divorce me, Ethan said, a glint in his eyes and amusement hidden in their depths. I cleared my throat, feeling the gazes of those around us. Let me go? A smile played on Ethan's lips as he looked down at me. I wasn't an expert in medicine, but I knew a little. After all, back in the inn residence, I had to be on guard against people trying to harm me every day. My original plan was to use the bribes I'd collected from the Mid-Autumn banquet to buy a shop and some land to grow medicinal herbs. Then I would hire a skilled physician for the shop and learn from them on the side. But in the end, all the money went to Ethan. I actually have a few apothecary shops in Wing Prefecture. Pick one. Consider it my compensation to you. Ethan suddenly turned around. His dark eyes, for once, were as clear as a spring, with no hidden emotions. All of Ethan's actions tonight had left me bewildered. Unlike his usual self, whose intentions I always had to carefully decipher, the Ethan tonight seemed to have placed his heart openly before me. His sudden kindness left me at a loss. You don't seem like yourself tonight, I managed to say, meeting his unusual gaze. Well, it is the first time I've shown such great benevolence. Rest assured, if I wanted to monitor you, I wouldn't need to resort to such methods, he added, as if trying hard to convince me to accept his offer. I've experienced your methods firsthand, so I'm well aware of that. Looking at Ethan's rare, serious expression, I had the sudden urge to laugh. So why haven't you agreed yet? Could it be you can't bear to leave me? His eyes curved, but the smile seemed a bit forced. Then I thank you. As soon as the words left my mouth, a pang of sorrow welled up in my heart. The next day, Ethan Joe had me escorted down the mountain and taken to a pharmacy in the city. The pharmacy was run by a married couple. The husband, Gabriel Guo, was a physician who handled consultations while his wife, Grace Mu, dispensed the medicine. I presented them with the pharmacy's deed and ledgers that Ethan had given me. I lied, claiming I was the daughter of the previous owner and had taken over the business after my father's passing. They checked the ledgers and the deed, confirming my story. Gabriel and his wife were honest, simple people. They showed no hostility toward my arrival. On the contrary, they were incredibly enthusiastic about helping me get acquainted with every aspect of the pharmacy. I went to the pharmacy every day to after day passed, and I never saw Ethan Zhao again. For some reason, I found myself staring blankly at the canopy of my bed for a long time each morning when I woke up. Surprisingly, a life without schemes and betrayals left me feeling empty. I even began to miss the past. Perhaps I'd grown so accustomed to a life of intrigue that I couldn't adjust to such peaceful days. News reached us that the Crown Prince's party had been ambushed by bandits on their way to East Prefecture. He was killed, his body mangled beyond recognition. I heard the emperor was so overcome with grief that he refused to eat or drink for days and ordered a thorough investigation. Subsequently, the third prince, Julian Zhao, was exposed. From the Crown Prince's fall from his horse to the assassination attempt during the Mid-Autumn Festival and even his death on the road, it had all been orchestrated by Julian. With conclusive evidence, Julian and his faction were stripped of their royal status and placed under house arrest for life. The task of investigating Julian's faction was given to the fifth prince, Nathan. Soon after being entrusted with this important role, he solved several thorny issues for appointed as soon as possible. And Nathan was one of the few suitable candidates. I only heard the news of Nathan being instated as Crown Prince 2 months later. Only then did I understand how someone as reckless as Julian could have repeatedly put Ethan in such mortal danger. It was because Julian was merely the blade in Nathan's hand, a pawn used to kill. The plots to frame Ethan were likely orchestrated by Nathan, who had his own people suggest them to Julian. Once the deed was done, Nathan just had to have the spy he'd planted by Julian's side expose everything. Then he could sit back and reap the rewards. 2 birds with 1 stone, a truly brilliant plan. Ethan had probably long been aware of Nathan's schemes. His fake death was likely a ruse to bide his time and gather his strength. But Nathan was so cautious. Would he truly believe Ethan was dead just by looking at a pile of charred corpses? Business is so slow. Are you trying to run this place into the ground? Are you doing here? My gaze unconsciously shifted behind him. Are your wounds any better? The words felt incredibly awkward, and I nearly bit my tongue. Completely healed. If you don't believe me, you can see for yourself, Ethan said, leaning closer with an even wider smile. Don't bring any spies here by strutting over so openly, I said, looking away and scanning the area for any suspicious individuals. His tone grew serious. The weak die within days, and in some cases, entire families have been wiped out. If anyone comes here seeking treatment for similar symptoms, you must be extremely careful. I hadn't expected that Ethan had come all this way just to warn me about the plague. A gentle warmth stirred in my heart. I had to suppress the urge to let it beat out of my chest. Why is there suddenly a plague? We didn't hear a word about it when we first arrived in East Prefecture. Someone did this intentionally, so of course they wouldn't let any news leak out. Ethan's eyes darkened. This same disease broke out 2 months ago in Gen City, 100 miles from here. So my earlier worries were for nothing. Nathan must have suspected Ethan faked his death and was willing to spread a plague to bury him along with the entire East Prefecture. Then you should leave this place as soon as possible. Once the plague spread, the prefect would report it to the imperial court. Nathan would surely use the opportunity to seal off East Prefecture, and then Ethan and his men would be trapped. It's too late. Checkpoints have been set up at every exit from East Prefecture. Many of my men on the mountain are already infected. Besides the trouble of moving them, a group this large would definitely arouse suspicion. Ethan shook his head, his expression grim. My only option is to develop a cure as quickly as possible. I don't know where this confidence came from, but I felt incredibly determined. It was then I understood. What I had been missing all this time wasn't the old days of scheming and fighting for survival. It was the hell fraught with danger. He had pushed me to safety, intending to face it all alone. How could I possibly abandon him? If we developed a cure and saved the people of East Prefecture from the plague, he would win their hearts. With popular support, Ethan could be resurrected. And with the will of the people, he could force Nathan to abdicate. Claire, you don't have to do any of this. You just need to live well. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. It was the first time he had shown such clear resistance in front of me. I will live well, and so will you. The tension in Ethan's brow smoothed into a smile. I finally decide to show a rare act of kindness, and you're just going to refuse my goodwill? I think I'd rather accept a different kind of favor from you, I said, then quickly turned and walked back into the pharmacy. My face was burning. I couldn't let Ethan see me like this. Otherwise, he'd never stop teasing me about it in the future. A soft chuckle came from behind me, followed by the sound of footsteps fading away. 100. Nathan would inevitably take the opportunity to lock down East Prefecture, perhaps even abandoning it entirely under the pretext of preventing the plague's spread. Each day was more desperate than the last. The once bustling streets were now deserted, and sounds of mourning echoed from every household. Gabriel, Grace, and I worked day and night to save the sick. Word somehow got out, and more people came to the pharmacy for help. The medicinal herbs in the pharmacy were nearly depleted, but the formulas we developed still couldn't cure the patients. They could only temporarily delay the symptoms. Perhaps it was because I hadn't slept for several days, but after delivering medicine to a patient, my legs felt weak, and I stumbled into an embrace. A pair of hands steadied my waist, and a sharp, cool scent enveloped me. It's not good to risk your life treating patients. I looked up and met Ethan's concerned gaze. I'm just a little tired. It's nothing serious. But you, Ethan, followed my gaze. I heard someone was about to run the pharmacy into the ground, so I came to lend a hand. I appreciate the kind thought, but there are many sick people here. Just put down the herbs and leave quickly before you get infected. As I spoke, I placed my hands on his chest to push him away. You really are heartless, trying to chase me away the moment I arrive? I smiled. I wouldn't dare. It's just that people are constantly coming and going, and most of them are infected. It's not safe. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. True. In that case, you be careful. With that, Ethan withdrew his hands, turned, and had his men put down the medicinal herbs. I watched him go, then we returned to caring for the patients and brewing the concoctions. Fortunately, that very night, Gabriel's latest formula showed a significant effect. Patients who had just been infected showed great improvement within 2 hours of taking it, and those who were seriously ill improved noticeably. Gabriel and Grace back into my room. Miss, you haven't slept in nearly 3 days. You can't let your body break down. My husband and I are enough out here. Before I could say a word, Grace had already closed the door. I used the light filtering through the paper window to light a candle. As the candlelight drove the darkness from the room, I saw Ethan, leaning against the head of the bed with his eyes closed in rest. The image of him leaving without a second thought earlier that day flashed through my mind. I didn't know whether to be angry or amused. The once great crown prince, second only to the emperor, has now been reduced to sneaking into a young lady's private chambers. Ethan opened his eyes at the sound of my voice, a slight smile playing on his lips. I am in my crown princess's room. What is improper about that? As he spoke, he stretched out a long arm and pulled me into his embrace. The formula has shown great progress. I imagine it won't be long before the people of East Prefecture Functory nod and a low hum in response. How come you don't look surprised at all? I tapped his shoulder, expressing my dissatisfaction with his reaction. His warm breath tickled my ear, and in that moment, I believed him. Gabriel and Grace must have been his people too. Thinking back, it made sense. Since I took over the pharmacy, everything had gone so smoothly. I hadn't encountered a single difficult issue. The crown prince's cunning is frightening. Tell me, how is it frightening? Ethan pressed closer, the sound of our clothes rustling, mingling with our breaths. My lips parted slightly, but before any words could escape my throat, he captured them. His sharp, cool scent invaded my senses. In the winter chill, his hot breath set my entire body on fire. I buried my face in his chest, gasping for air, and pinched his arm through his clothes. Tinged with playful resentment, my grip wasn't exactly light. When spring comes, I'm taking my troops to the capital. Claire, I want you to come with me. Gabriel's formula worked wonders against the pest. I wrote down the formula and distributed it to the public. The story of the former Crown Prince Ethan's return from the dead to save the people of East Prefecture spread like wildfire. Compared to Nathan, who had sealed off the city and left its people to fend for themselves, Ethan became the one who held the hearts of the people. But before long, instead of an imperial edict summoning Ethan back to the capital, we received news that the emperor had passed away and Crown Prince Nathan had ascended the throne. Nathan couldn't wait any longer. He had impatiently disposed of the emperor and completely ignored the matter of the former crown prince in East Prefecture. Acting too hastily leaves one vulnerable. Nathan's desperate move to eliminate the emperor only gave Ethan another reason to wage war, avenging his father's suspicious death. Nathan's cunning was no match for Ethan's. He had miscalculated. Ethan had been in the Eastern Palace for many years, and the depth of his plans was beyond imagination. Nathan's army suffered one defeat after another. In less than half a year, take at least 3 months, but Ethan didn't seem the least bit worried. He must have already figured out a way to take the city. I just never imagined that the plan would involve Mary Tong. That day, Mary Tong, dressed as a common woman, came alone to the outskirts of the camp. She said she could open the city gates at night to let the soldiers in, because her father and brother were the very generals guarding the capital's north gate. When she looked at Ethan, her eyes were filled with a love so intense it made my heart ache. She said, "Ethan, I gave you my heart the moment I first fell in love. Do you have any idea how much pain I was in during the days without you? Ethan, you just need to trust me. Ethan, I don't want to be an Empress Dowager. I just want to be your wife." My hands clenched into fists inside my sleeves. Watching Mary Tong take advantage of the situation filled me with waves of disgust. But what disgusted me even more was stranger. After explaining the specific time to open the gates, Mary Tong still refused to leave, making small talk with Ethan. I looked at the pair and felt tears burning my eyes. Just as I was about to find an excuse to leave, Ethan spoke. "Claire, please see Lady Mary out." "I wouldn't want to cause any trouble," Mary Tong said, casting a triumphant glance my way. On the day of Ethan's attack on the city, only a few hundred soldiers remained in the camp. I left a letter and fled the camp, riding my horse as fast as I could in the opposite direction of the capital. I don't know how much time passed. The horse was beginning to show signs of fatigue. I looked up at the sky, which was about to be draped in a cloth of night, and wondered if everything was going smoothly for Ethan. I stopped to build a fire and roasted the chicken I had taken from the camp to satisfy my hunger. The charcoal fire sent a delicious aroma into the air. Just as I was about, blood on his armor had been dried by the wind during his frantic ride. From the extent of the bloodstains, it looked like he'd had a very successful day of battle. The emperor isn't in the palace eating delicacies, but has instead come out to steal a common girl's meal. Isn't that a bit improper? The smell of blood hit me, and I couldn't help but pinch my nose. A flicker of anger crossed Ethan's eyes. I was fighting for my life in the palace, and you, my wife, deserted your post. Who is being outrageous here? Your wife is in the palace, carrying your child in her belly. I couldn't help but laugh. As I was about to back away, he grabbed me, his handsome features magnified before my eyes, a dangerous hint in his smile. Well, so it was you who was playing me for a fool all along." He was clearly using Mary Tong, and I almost believed him and Mary. It just goes to show you can't tell truth from fiction when dealing with people who've been steeped in schemes since childhood. When suspicion grew in me. I pretended to help her up and took the opportunity to check her pulse. Mary Tong quickly pulled her hand away and shot some sarcastic remarks at me, completely unaware that she had already exposed her weakness. And Ethan was an even bigger scoundrel, deliberately provoking me and then leaving me to figure out the truth for myself. The fetus in Mary's womb was less than 4 months along, so it definitely wasn't the late emperor's child. The only person who could make her risk her life to lure Ethan into a trap was Nathan. Now, Mary Tong's previous attempts to get close to Ethan made sense. It was likely to test whether his leg injury was real. And her previous act of deliberately letting Serafina Lin discover me with Adrian Chi could also be explained. She clearly wanted to sow discord between Ethan and Julian's factions to hasten Julian's plot against Ethan. Mary and Nathan must have been desperate to deal with Ethan's army, resorting to a plan to wipe them out in one go. And they would have just needed to lie in ambush and annihilate them. It seemed now that Ethan had turned the tables on them. For Nathan to ambush Ethan's army, he would have had to station heavy troops at the north gate. This, in turn, would weaken the defenses of the other city gates, allowing Ethan to break through one of them with his main force. But I never expected he would come after me. After all, he was Ethan Zhao, the man who could calculate everything. How could he possibly lose? I let out a soft laugh. Look who's frantically chasing after whom now, acting as if he's afraid I'll run away. I covered my mouth and couldn't stop laughing. Oh, it's you, Your Majesty. Ethan brought the roasted chicken to my lips. Less talk, more eating. The road at night is difficult. Where are we going? To a place you can never run away from. Is there such a place? Yes, our home, home. It was a word that couldn't feel more foreign. After struggling alone in this complicated world for so long, I finally's extra chapter. After his fall from a horse left him with a leg injury, the people who had once flattered him all changed their tunes. The court, the imperial palace, they were inherently places of power and opportunism. He had long grown used to it. He just hadn't expected the one who harmed him to be Nathan Zhao, who had been biding his time for over a decade in the cold palace. Fine. He would play along and stage a fake death. Let them fight it out, and he would come back to clean up the mess. But then an unexpected variable appeared. Claire Yin, the substitute bride from the Yin family. Ethan had originally planned to use his fake death as an opportunity to silence her, since the Yin family had long sided with his third brother, and he never kept another spy. But he never thought Claire would turn the wedding upside down, thoroughly humiliating her own sister. He had lived for 20 years, and countless women had thrown themselves at him, but she was the first to fall asleep drunk in his arms. He looked at Claire resting on his arm. Her cheeks. A slight smile curved Ethan's lips as he carried her back to her room. He'd finally found some amusement. It would be a shame if she died too soon. The next day, Mary Tong deliberately pretended to be dizzy and fell into his arms, all to test if his legs were truly crippled. But he never expected that Claire would take Mary's feigned affection for real. Her soft body stumbled into his arms, her cherry lips parting and closing, spouting the most absurd lies. Claire's acting wasn't perfect, but she made him laugh. Fine. Perhaps not faking his death and watching her performance wasn't so bad after all. His father summoned him to the imperial study. The conversation had nothing to do with politics. Instead, he kept dropping hints, asking about his health. After all, who would want an heir who couldn't stand on his own 2 feet? The throne has always been built on a pile of bones. If you don't climb on others' shoulders to get to the top, you reach the imperial garden. He saw Claire in a struggle with her former lover. He watched her cheating with great interest, only to hear her fabricating more rumors about him. For some reason, Ethan felt a strange heat rise within him. He looked at Claire again. Her face wasn't red, her heart wasn't racing. Only then did he feel as if he had woken from a dream. It seemed he had truly started to care for Claire. But Claire was heartless. All she thought about was amassing wealth and leaving, completely unaware that she had stepped into a carefully laid trap. When he took that assassin's blade for her, in the moment before his eyes closed, he saw the shock in Claire's blood-splattered eyes. She was still too foolish. If he wasn't there to protect her, what would she do in the future? When he woke, he sensed someone checking his pulse. Ethan cautiously peeked through his eyelashes. When he saw it was Claire, he felt a secret joy. At the same time, Ethan found it amusing. But all he received in return was vigilance and fear. He confiscated the silver she had collected during the mid-autumn banquet, kissed her in the chaos, and finally abducted her to East Prefecture. That night, he couldn't hold back and revealed his true self. He held her hand and taught her how to kill, but in the end, he still let her go. The once calculating Crown Prince Ethan was now so lost in his feelings that he couldn't even understand himself. Pathetic and pitiful. When Ethan returned, he found Claire standing dazed in front of the pharmacy. He watched her from a distance for a moment, breathing a sigh of relief. But unfortunately for him, she wanted to face the dangers by his side. In war, there is no such thing as a 100% chance of victory. Therefore, on the day Mary Tong pretended to offer her plan, he went along with her, knowing Claire would fall for it. He decided to provoke her a little more, to drive her away. After all, on the day of the assault, he would lead a small number of soldiers into the city to face the heavy ambush laid by Nathan to drag her down with him. If he had to fall into a bottomless abyss, he would jump alone. The moment he captured the capital, he gave some hasty orders and rushed back to the camp outside the city. As he expected, she was truly gone. As he chased after her, he rehearsed his explanation in his mind over and over, afraid of misspeaking, afraid she wouldn't believe him. But he never expected that she had already figured out his plan. Her so-called departure was just her way of getting back at him for not telling her the whole truth. He had fought so hard to catch her. He would never let her go again. In the deep palace, hearts are separated by mountains. A great fortune to have my beloved by my side.